What happened this week would send a chill down your spine if you live in the United Kingdom, the land of so-called free speech, democratic values and human rights. British Airways decided to cancel its sponsorship of Louis Theroux's podcast because he committed a grave sin. What is that grave sin? He interviewed punk band Bob Vylan artist Pascal Robinson Foster. Yes, that was the only sin committed by Louis Theroux. How dare he interview someone who is so critical of Israeli genocide in Gaza? That's all you need to be cancelled in a so-called first world country these days. You simply cannot criticize genocidal maniacs from the illegal settler colony of Israel. You will thrive in your job if you act as a cheerleader or even dehumanize the victims of the Israeli genocide, as we saw most of the BBC presenters do in the last 2 years. But the moment you express your disgust against a genocide, particularly when the perpetrators are Israeli psychopaths, you must be punished, and punished severely. Here's what happened. You remember this year's Glastonbury festival, when Bob Vylan dominated global headlines after its frontman Simon Foster chanted "Death to the IDF" in reference to the terror outfit Israeli Defense Forces.
Free, free! Free, free! Free, free! Alright, but have you heard this one though? Death, death to the IDF! 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 Hell yeah, from the river to the sea, Palestine must be, will be, inshallah, it will be free.
The current Labour government, which is led by an Israeli stooge called Keir Starmer, reacted angrily and demanded answers from the BBC, which had forgotten to stop the live telecast of Bob Vylan's "Death to the IDF" chants. Starmer's Zionist Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy, whose ministry is responsible for managing the BBC affairs, was seen in deep pain as she continued with her rants in the parliament on multiple occasions.
There was something particularly pernicious about chanting death, death to the IDF. Many colleagues will know that in Israel there is a conscription model. Every young person is required to serve in the IDF, which means that chanting death to the IDF is equivalent to calling for the death of every single Israeli Jew. That is why one of the many reasons why we take this so seriously and why it cannot be argued that this did not cross a very dangerous line.
The BBC was forced to launch an internal inquiry and even admit that it had made a serious editorial mistake on the broadcast of Bob Vylan's chants. The same BBC could never feel the urge to launch an internal inquiry when its staff shamelessly sided with the Israeli genocidal maniacs during their Gaza coverage on countless occasions. BBC Director General Tim Davie, he even appeared before the Parliamentary Select Committee to repeat his profound regret.
And at that point I knew absolutely that it was an anti-Semitic broadcast. So my decision was to get that off on demand. Simple as that. I mean, it wasn't too complicated in my mind, okay? And to your point, I do think it was deeply disturbing. Deeply disturbing. I mean, personally, I've talked to many people about this. I thought it was deeply disturbing what happened. I mean, the BBC made a very significant mistake.
That's the power of the Israeli lobby. If anyone ever had any doubt about the control of the Israeli lobby over the British establishment, this episode removed any such doubts. And now British Airways has done its bit to conclusively prove that the UK is no longer a land of free speech, and in fact, Israeli savages run this country through their severely compromised politicians and entities. In a statement, British Airways said, and I quote, "Our sponsorship of the series has now been paused and the advert has been removed. We are grateful that this was brought to our attention, as the content clearly breaches our sponsorship policy in relation to politically sensitive or controversial subject matters. We and our third-party media agency have processes in place to ensure these issues don't occur, and we are investigating how this happened." End quote. The statement by British Airways is laughable. Louis Theroux is known for interviewing controversial figures. What Bob Vylan, artist, said at this year's Glastonbury festival wasn't a crime under the UK law. He was merely expressing his disgust over the genocidal campaign of Israeli terrorists. But one of Louis Theroux's guests this year was Israeli terrorist Daniela Weiss, whose public utterances and criminal action both violate international laws in the occupied West Bank. And yet, the BBC had no problem in airing that documentary on its channel, and British Airways found this piece of journalism kosher.
Let's say, now we have a camera here.
Yes.
And I do this.
Yeah.
Do something. You don't mind what I did to you. You don't necessarily have to do
Well,
it.
I won't do that to you.
You won't.
No.
And then the camera takes just part. You don't have the full picture. Then I say you're violent. You're violent against a woman. This is exactly what is going on all the time with what you call
Settler violence.
Settler violence. Settlers do not wake up in the morning or do not go wait for sundown to attack. No, 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 no. Why should we wake up in the morning and think about violence? Why? Our life is good.
Because you want the Palestinians to leave.
No, 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 no.
You've said so.
I said that what is on my mind all the time is how to bring more people to settle the land.
A spokesperson at Mindhouse Productions, which was founded by Theroux and produces the Louis Theroux podcast, has not commented on the BA sponsorship. But his production company told Sky News, and I quote, "Louis is a journalist with a long history of speaking to controversial figures who may divide opinion. We would suggest people watch or listen to the interview in its entirety to get the full context of the conversation." End quote. Bob Vylan called it a scare tactic as it tweeted, and I quote, "They thought they were going to get a dumb, angry punk ranting. Instead, they got articulate and considered responses to each question with facts to back it up when needed. Their hope to further vilify me couldn't run, so they target Louis to make an example for sitting with me. The lobby groups, the British government and media are determined to make an example of me, all because I dare to want an end to a genocidal occupying force guilty of war crimes." End quote. The Bob Vylan artist had told Louis Theroux that he would repeat that chant again.
Do you stand by the chant, and would you chant that on stage now?
Oh, yeah. Like what? If I was to go on Glastonbury again tomorrow, yeah, I would do it again. I'm not regretful of it. I'm not regretful of it. I do it again tomorrow, twice on Sundays. I'm not regretful of it at all. Like the subsequent backlash that I've faced, it's minimal. It's minimal compared to what people in Palestine are going through. And they're the people that I'm doing it for. They're the people that I'm being vocal for. Then what is there to regret?
This is where we have come to in the UK. Free speech only applies to people who support a genocide of non-white people. Imagine if Louis Theroux interviewed racist thug Tommy Robinson or an indicted war criminal Benjamin Netanyahu. I'm sure British Airways would be absolutely happy with this content. Clearly, this airline has exposed itself so spectacularly. I used to be the executive club member of British Airways, but I'm so glad that I chose not to renew my membership many years ago and have since not flown this airline. The anger against this company on social media just shows that just like the corrupt politicians, British Airways too has failed to understand the mood of British public. That's because despite the criticism from pro-Israeli lobby in the UK, the support for Bob Vylan among their fans has continued to skyrocket, with their album Humble as the Sun re-entering the charts and climbing to #1 in the UK hip-hop and R&B album category. This is the disconnect that I talked about in my last video. Just because a bunch of corrupt and compromised individuals and entities think you must not protest against a genocide doesn't mean this represents the views of the majority of British public. Make no mistake, British public will punish those collaborators of genocide at the earliest opportunity. As for British Airways, I wouldn't be surprised if more and more people will start avoiding this airline in time to come, even as demands to add this airline on the BDS list grow. That's it from me. Thank you very much for your support of this channel and our journalism. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so, because that's one of the many ways you can support independent journalism. God bless you all.